Welcome to the Science Fiction and Fantasy Factory. I'm your host, Mookie Spitz, and I'm thrilled to have Michael S. Clarke on the factory floor today. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Mookie. It's a pleasure to be here.
It is great to have you. Speculative science fiction writer, co-anthologist in the 2026 Science Fiction Authors Anthology put together by S.A. Gibson. And I've reached out to my colleagues in science fiction crime, and I've had several of you as guests, and I am excited to have you as a guest. I enjoyed your two stories, which was Round the World and Hullborn in the anthology. They're very different in style.
But they were pretty divergent from my typical subject matter. It's one of these little thought bubbles that you have, and you start scribbling on a notepad, and the next thing you know, you've got a story.
Yeah, where does the inspiration come from? And then you are working on a novel. I believe it's your longest piece to date, Synthetic, and you're putting that together. And you gave me a little preview, which I appreciate. We could talk a little bit about that too.
That's the copy I've been sending out to agents. I'm agent hunting at this point, looking for representation. So I don't. If it's not ready, let me know. But I'm flogging it out there. No responses yet.
Well, I'm not the arbiter of publish or non-publish. The one thing agents are looking for isn't even the ostensible quality of the work itself, but whether the author has a legacy social media presence.
Oh yeah. And I just ripped mine out and put it back together again this weekend. So,
all right, you're one weekend in to your social media presence.
Yeah, I was on Substack and became a little distracted and disillusioned by it. So I went back out, just went straight in, just blogging space.
Substack kind of sucks. I've had many Substack authors on the podcast where I met them. There are benefits to Substack. There is a robust writers community on Substack. And there's some great writers and great people. And I've had many on the pod already. And I love that community building and fist pumping on Substack. But in terms of a social media platform, it's got the same algorithm-based challenges. It's hard to get attention in the crowded stream.
Yeah,
and as a monetization engine, it of course relies entirely on you, your mailing list, and they get their cut for doing the data processing, which is also data mining. But hey, it's another channel among many.
Yeah, it's one among many. So I've just been thinking that I'm just going to go step back and get simple about the whole promotional thing, as I'm not sure if Synthetic's going to make it with the agents or whatever, and I don't have a track record of 5 novels with a big following and all that kind of stuff, which they also look for, and so that it would have to be somebody that's would accept a newbie kind of. Well, I'm not really so much newbie, as I've been at this, as I said, since 2015, but I haven't honed my craft until just recently. It's sufficiently enough to think that I was good enough to present.
Why not go the indie author route? You could literally upload Synthetic today, and you'll have an ISBN numbered book in paperback or hard copy form on your desk within a week.
Yep, I could do that. And I had actually, this book, Synthetic, is part of another 2 books that I had previously published. that turned out to be okay. I just wanted to get them out there. I was in a big hurry. It turned out to be two things that I wasn't very proud of. So I pulled them back off the market, jammed them together, squished a whole bunch of stuff out, resynthesized it into one book, and then went through a few rounds of editing to purge out all the POV problems. Oh my goodness. Changing POV is not for the timid. It's, if you know what I mean by POV, the whether it's third person or first person perspective on the narrative, and that was a brutal process. Anyway, so that would explain why I've been at this since 2015, because it's I rewrote the whole thing just out of not being happy. So I went the Amazon route first, and the only real sales I have is when I put it on for free, and then I get like 500 sales, yay! And I put the price back on, crickets. So that's sort of a heartbreaking author experience, but
well, it's crowded, and I've had various authors who do various approaches to publishing. On the one side is the traditional route. You get your agent, and then you get someone to back you. But even in that instance, the onus is on you as an author to promote your own content. A publisher can only do so much.
Mm-hmm.
And I've cited examples of my friend. I have a good friend who did that route and did it very, very successfully. An enormous social media following, got an agent, did a treatment, got an advance to complete his book, and major publisher with big time reviewers. And it really didn't take off the way he had anticipated. And I think that had a lot to do with his lack of personal participation in the marketing process. He felt that he did everything he had to do, and then the publisher would take it from there. And that just wasn't the case at all.
Yeah.
And that's never the case, really, unless you've already established a significant name for yourself. So for a new writer, whether you like it or not, you will have to self-promote. The other question is speed and control. So it might take years to vet an agent and an agent to vet you. The edits, the back and forth, the contracting, before your idea actually sees it on a bookshelf or even in an online store through a traditional publisher. And as we mentioned, you can do KDP or Barnes and Noble or any one of a dozen different self-publishing platforms and have it up and out there in a week. But then you have no backing, zero. It's completely up to you. So that I think is the trade-off. And there's also a credibility gap. People, even these days, assume that if you've got a publisher's logo on your book, then you're legit. And since everyone and their grandma can publish on Amazon and everyone and their grandma does, you really have no credibility, no authority coming out the gate as an Amazon self-published author. So it's a matter of
you build it yourself. And that's a really good point. And it comes full cycle for what I've been going through, and I think, okay, well, let's try the agent thing. Maybe this is good enough to grab attention right away without all that. And it's not good enough. And so I think you're right. It's the inevitable indie process. And I noticed that there are a couple of sci-fi publishers out there that are not your Penguins or Random House or any of the big players that you can go directly to and have. It's almost like what do you call those publishers where you pay the money and they a vanity press, but it isn't. It's sort of a very geeky sci-fi kind of publisher, and they have all these science fiction writers and publications I've never heard of before. And to your point, you really do have to promote it yourself, because they don't promote anything; they just put it out there. And I think they basically facilitate the editing maybe, and maybe the actually printing of the books and so on and so forth. So that's another possibility. But I really think that, you know, I've been in sales. I've done promotions. I've started businesses and all that stuff. I really should do it. I can't be a lazy bugger and not do it. It's kind of like starting a software startup. It's really a lot in the self promotion. And if you can't self promote, you're just going to have the greatest idea ever, and nobody's going to listen to you.
Yeah, I had Daniel P. Douglas on the podcast just the other day. That actually is the nom de plume of two brothers, identical twins, Phil and Paul Garver. And they collaborate on books. One or the other will own it, and the other one will be editor. But the way the roles delineate in terms of marketing and content, it seems Phil is the real driver for that. He researches campaigns, and he activates and tries different things in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
And Paul even just said out loud that stuff makes me want to puke sometimes. I just want to write.
Yeah.
But Phil has a lust for engagement, and he's got a real presence on Substack, and he does really active reviewing of content and resharing. And the dude is just a brilliant powerhouse of literary critic, writer, and marketer. He's just firing on all cylinders, and Paul is the one creating a lot of the content and working with him.
Oh yeah.
But you need that combo. You need that kind of combo of marketing and content creation. It's the Joyce, Shem, and Sean brothers of Finnegan's Wake, where Shem is the word and Sean is the proselytizer. And there needs to be both aspects for a writer to be successful. So whether you can do it yourself or you need to hire it or partner with it, it's inevitable that you need to get that outreach. And frankly, I'm probably more like Paul. I'm a combination of both brothers, but I tend to be pretty bad at the marketing too when it comes to my own stuff.
Well, I noticed that your stuff is marketable. I mean, it's character driven, and I thought, well, I was thinking to myself, this would be easy to sell, relative to hard science, all the stuff that, obviously you've done some research, you've read some scientific papers and stuff, you're bouncing ideas around in your writing, but you can get caught up in that, and I find that the book that this synthetic one that I'm doing, it was really heavy tech, and then EJ's pounding on my head, no, get that out, squish, and take all the exposition out of it. And EJ is the editor. She's in the science fiction novelist group, and she was co-editor of that anthology that you held up a little while ago. And anyway, she's got such an eye for that kind of stuff that, and when you read it as a writer, what I find is the really tough part is editing your own stuff. Like, I don't know what your style is. I tend to just dump it all out, create an outline, and then just go stream of consciousness into the outline, fill it all in, and then come back to it and say, oh my God, what a mess. I have to clean this up. And then go through and slog through it and reorient it and take out the exposition. But the problem with that is that your brain translates it before you. Let me see. How do I say this? Your brain processes it as if it was normal. It knows what you were trying to say, but you didn't say it correctly. You didn't get it across to the reader. You got it across to yourself, and to try and translate that, you have to really step back from it. And I went, there's an editing process that I do now, is I get, and people may go, AI, I get AI to read it to me. And because when I read it to myself, it's the same thing. I can't, I would have to hire somebody else to read my book to me or create an audio book. And then by that time, I'd have to edit it and change it anyway, right? So, so I don't use it. I just get AI to read it to me. And when it'll be blah 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 blah, and I'm nodding, yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh crap! I just zoned out for 2 paragraphs because it's all gumbo, so you got to go stop it, go back, re-edit. So that is something I find is super helpful to get my exposition out. But I'm working on some new stuff too, and I find that doesn't happen so much anymore. Is as you work your craft, your brain starts to think that way. It starts to go, oh, this is not right. You're at it again. You're doing it again. Stop, back up, and retype that. What would the character do, as opposed to what is the character thinking? If it's as your writer, you can't just say, okay, explain what's in his head, or what you think is supposed to be in his head. Is you explain, okay, if that is in his head, what does he do? And then put it out there. So that's what I'm doing now in another book. EJ has that. She's editing it as we speak. She may get to read this. Bit of free promotion. Anyway, so I mentioned her name 3 times.
We could put a link to her skills in the podcast description. I'm sure she would appreciate that. You're focused on behavior and function, opposed to interior state and exposition. I think is on point.
Yeah, so I don't explain Albuquerque drives to anybody.
It's in my book too.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, you like that stuff too. I noticed you're talking about dimensions and all that sort of thing, and yeah. So I'm actually slogging through dimensional science books. There's this one called Twisted Paths or Twisted Passages or something like that. It was published back in around 2010, and it's an MIT prof. It's really heavy going, like blah, 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 blah. But I'm doing it just to force myself through the discipline of, okay, what is the real theory out there on these multiple dimensions and stuff? And, it's interesting stuff there, but
there's a dream sequence in my first book with Johnny on the bridge of an Alcubierre starship.
Oh, really?
And it's about to go transluminal. And then later in the book, it's a foreshadowing for when he actually hijacks one, and he gets a hold of negative matter to power it, and it's delivered by the same arms dealer who delivers the thermonuclear weapon in the earlier book for the transfinite reality engine to activate. So he gets 100 kilos of negative matter to fuel the Alcubierre ship. Yeah, and it's strapped to the roof of a van, and negative matter reacts opposite to gravitational energy. So it's resistant. So it's strapped to the van with Velcro strips, and Johnny gets on top.
Flapping strips.
Yeah, and then Johnny unlatches it, and the mass hits him in the chest, and he grabs it, and it's like a skydiver in reverse. He's flying up into orbit with the fuel of the ship.
Oh, goodness.
So I did research for that, and I use AI for research. So rather than go to the source material, there's tons of speculative journal articles on Alcubierre ships, negative mass, all that kind of stuff, and
negative energy and
negative energy. It's super fun, because when you research it, then you go down all these rabbit holes. So here's just an example of how vivid it is, because you could translate it into the lived experience of your characters. So Johnny is tumbling upward into the atmosphere in reverse skydiver fashion, and he's got Marfan syndrome. He's like 6'8", 6'9", big bouffant of blonde hair, thin and skinny like Abraham Lincoln, and he's got this 100 kilos of negative matter that that he's hanging on to and propelling. And since it's the opposite in ways of regular matter, that the brighter it is around the matter, the darker the mass is. It absorbs the energy. And when it gets out closer to space and it starts to darken and all that, then it starts to glow because it's inverse. And the tighter Johnny grabs the mass, the more the mass resists the energy that he puts into it. And then when he lets it go a little bit, then the mass clings even more. So that's a neat experience. I haven't seen that in science fiction before, and it's all a product of just doing a little research and having fun with hard science, and then putting it into the lived experience of your character.
Yeah, exactly, and that's a great example. I hadn't thought of that either. But and don't be putting ideas in my head now. But
yeah, people listening are like, "Oh, Mookie, that's a great idea."
Yeah,
All of a sudden,
right.
the Alcubierre guy going a reverse skydiver to the ship is going to be in a dozen different indie.
Oh, you wait! You're going to see it on Netflix next week.
And that Netflix.
Yeah, it's so cool to read this stuff, and then you kind of sit back and say, "Gee, that's heavy science." You sort of force your way through it, and then you sit back and say, "Well, what if it's true?" And and that's what my speculative stuff is okay. There's a theory out there that says this is true and that this would really happen. This is how you could conceivably do it. And I like you, I use AI to say, okay, here are these theories, here are these scientific papers that I've read that are pointing to this stuff. Could you please summarize them and synthesize them and look for a way to make this possible? And because this is, this is not possible, but if you want to write some sci-fi, here's some idea. It's you kind of, you work your way through these theories and condense them, and then into a scene like that where all the properties that you described are happening. You see, what was it? I'm trying to think of something in synthetic, and what I've got some, Albuquerque drive, warp drive kind of wormhole travel, stuff in the book, but it's more about the effect of uploading your brain into a system of some kind, and you could do it solo, one upload into one synthetic mind, or you could go into like a multi-tenant, and here I am, a software cloud architect geek guy, situation where you got a whole host of millions of minds uploaded that can then communicate with each other.
The hive mind for that.
Yeah, like a hive mind, sort of co-linked. But then you start thinking, well, what if the synapses in your brain that go between the neurons they're artificial in an artificial brain. They're not organic anymore. What if they start forming between the uploaded minds? Like you start thinking, and then suddenly there's a connection automatically to another uploaded mind. And then you start extrapolating on that and say, okay, well, what does a person do when they experience that? What happens? And you can't explain it, because that's the exposition stuff that I was getting trapped in. It's like, oh, okay, this is what they were feeling, this is what they were thinking. No. This is what they did in response.
Keep it through the lens of your character. That's the biggest lesson that I've learned when I had these stillbirth misfires of Mookie short stories and writing. It was too expositional, and it was too much of that describing the setting, the science, and the circumstance. If you focus on character and you give them a goal and then you present obstacles, and then you set them loose, and all of the world building and science and whatever simply becomes part of their journey to accomplish their goal or not, then you're on the right footing as an author.
Yeah, I think so.
See, things go off the rails when authors lose sight of that or forget. And
yeah, it's easy to insert yourself into it. It's and the it's some editors have done some serious finger wagging in that science fiction novelist group. It's you can't do that. That's lazy writing. Exploding. Yeah, I know. So you just have to go through and fix it. But the whole writing process I've found to be such a fascinating thing. My background is IT. I have a geology degree. I'm from Halifax, Nova Scotia, by the way.
Yeah, I've been there.
Up in the fog.
Up in the fog. I went for a business meeting to Halifax. It's way out there.
Yeah, but there's a direct flight from Boston, and there's one from New York. American Airlines, they fly there. That's why, I suppose, there's a lot of connections between Halifax and Boston, New York. Family,
family, and maybe even a little business.
Yeah, a little business. Yeah. But the family connections are amazing. Like, I've done this whole genealogy thing, and I've got 1,600 cousins in New England. Just
maybe the sea lanes, the shipping, the trading,
and the fact that these were all British expats that came over, and then the ones that had something to lose during the Revolution went up to Nova Scotia as what they call loyalists, right? But they're all their cousins and relatives and everything were down there, so that you've got it's fourth and fifth cousins all over the place down there. It's amazing. I used to go and visit relatives down in Manamet, Boston. I spent months down there. Loved it. It's a great place. Really enjoyed that. I went to school there actually for a while. Manamet, nice little town.
Boston has its charm.
Yeah, as long as you don't
sometimes liken my little video vignettes that I put on TikTok to Bill Burr, and he is the Boston stand-up comic. He epitomizes the working class stand-up, irascible, cynical, everyman comic. Outraged by himself and the world, and can't shut the hell up. So that's part of that the Boston accent and the Boston attitude.
Yeah, well, it's the Boston attitude. It's the one thing I notice about Boston and the attitude is the driving. I've never experienced driving I've driven all over the place. I've driven in the Middle East. I've driven in Europe. I've driven in all over. As an IT guy, I have the contractor. I just go and work here and work there for 6 months and work there for 12 months. And I've been all over the place. And the driving in Boston is a unique experience, as is the driving in Montreal, which is another very unique experience. So if you want to emulate F1 driving in a Fiat, or a Renault, go to Montreal.
Cultural norms and mores.
It's pothole dodging as well because of the cold.
Anyway. Maybe you can nanite the driving expertise of a Bostonian or Quebecois, right? And speaking of which, your recurring themes are this singularity between carbon and silicon, between sentient biological organisms and AI. That keeps recurring. You've got some post-apocalyptic settings that you play with, and you seem fascinated by that construct that you were just describing, the brain in a box. Philip Cahill, our fellow anthologist, I had him on the podcast last week, and he is obsessed with telepathic communication. And the point you brought up with the nodes and the networks, that if you transfer a brain into a box, as it were, then you eliminate the biological organic boundary between sentient beings, and then you could all of a sudden have a lot of interplay between these minds. And Philip wasn't as explicit about that, but that's one of his themes that keep recurring, which is these forms of what would be considered extrasensory perception related to artificial intelligence, AGI, and superintelligence. That one aspect of superintelligence is this communication that eludes us for the most part as organic beings because we're physically separate from each other.
Yeah, we're in this box right here. Yeah, and the only thing we've got is typing and speaking, right? That's are the interfaces to our brains, right?
I like how those themes come together. Another guest I had on the podcast, AC Wise, she is a science fiction and fantasy writer in her own right, and she is one of the premier reviewers, science fiction reviewers for Locust and Apex.
Oh yeah.
So she's busy, and she reads just about everything. And I asked her what one of the benefits of having such a comprehensive view of the science fiction fantasy landscape entailed. And she mentioned that she sees common themes that keep recurring in all of these stories, whether they're shorter pieces or full-blown novels. She sees these trends that keep bubbling up and expressing themselves. And she loves how they're expressed in so many different ways. And they tend to trend like sci-fi fantasy memes of ever more elaborate sophistication and diversity. And this sentient AI telepathy communication is one of them. And you and Philip are into it. And I like how you guys are completely different in how you use it and bring it to life.
Yeah, I'm playing with that. I am fascinated by this because I really do think that, and I've been following, as a computer geek, I've been following AI since I was a sci-fi aficionado in my geology. I studied geology. That was my degree at St. Mary's University in Halifax. So that's where I learned how to learn. So that's where they basically teach you how to teach yourself. Because I don't know if you've been through the degree mill kind of thing, and you sit in a room and got some guy way down in the front there, and this little board about this big. He's standing there and he's waving this little white thing, and he's leaving cryptic stuff that you have to use a telescope to read. And you sit there and you're falling asleep while this guy's got down there, and so you're really teaching yourself. And you might be able to get 5 minutes of his time walking to his office or something like that to explain something that you can't figure out. So when you get to, and I'm a little cynical, I guess. Some cynicism just escaped there about university education, didn't it? But anyway, that whole self-learning thing goes to what's happening now with AI. And I've been following, since I was a sci-fi fan, I've been following this through the 70s and 80s and 90s, and it was getting more and more real and less science fiction. And you've got somebody like Asimov back in the 60s and 70s doing iRobot, which just blew my mind at the time. And it's still relevant. Like, you look back on that iRobot and he's not too far off the mark, and then there's the I'll be back, the one about the nano from the future, right? So that's another one of the nano things. And so what I've been following is a combination of things. There's a culmination of technologies that's coming up that just blows me away. Every time I think about this, the hair stands up in the back of my neck and I go, oh my God, what's going to happen? Is the AI, which is already happening. It's around us now. I mean, have a chat with ChatGPT and it blows your mind. It's like it's so
I had
close.
ChatGPT as a guest on my podcast.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a great.
It was a pretty good guest. It's kind of
Yeah.
hard to tell. Turing test on the podcast. Chatty pretty much passed.
Good one. Yeah, I can believe that. Anyway, so if you've got these technologies, and then there's nanotechnology, which really scares the heck out of me, which is, what's I'll be back. What's the name of that story? Schwarzenegger was in that about the nano. Anyway, anybody that's listening to this, you know what it is. Leave it in the comments down below. Anyway, so there's nano, AI, and then you've got the computer technology, which everybody's sound asleep about this. Like they don't seem to get the fact that there's this revolution happening under our feet and we don't realize what's going on. And that is the optical quantum chips that they're coming out with now. Like they cost millions of dollars now, but remember what happened in the 60s when you had $1 million mainframe. Now you've got a phone that has more power than the $1 million mainframe, and you got it on sale from a phone company. Anyway, so you've got this that research took me a while to figure it out. Is they're predicting that you will be able to have something that has as many neurons in it. Like if you think of a little subprocessor kind of unit that you can use that is more powerful than the human mind, that's the size of a tennis ball. And yes, if you do the numbers, you can figure it out. So this is where it's going. And so it's about 2035, you've got all of these things converging. And there's a futurist, Kurzweil.
Kurzweil's been snoozing ever since Google gave him that cush job.
Well, yeah, he's been.
Has Kurzweil done anything of any real? I don't mean to knock him. He was a brilliant inventor, and I guess he deserved a cush Google job. But I haven't seen him say or do anything since Google swallowed him up as their big innovation guy.
Well, he may be transforming into an AI. I don't know at this point.
I just think it shows you the challenge of putting diapers on a genius and giving them limitless potential, and then they go out to pasture.
Well, I don't think the guy he's not out to pasture. He's probably working on something because he had a book that came out a couple of years ago. I read that.
And anyone can write a book. Michio Kaku has been writing books.
Yeah.
And he's another hyperventilating blowhard. I mean, his string theory contributions were there, but he has been sensationalizing bullshit for decades.
Well,
so
people
I don't mean to crap on Michio, but this fake science, bullshit science has been a real plague, I think, for a long time.
Well, I think there's a human tendency, and it's one of the things that I've also got into it's as a result of researching what happens when you take your mind and copy it, all of the objects in your brain, and there's like 4 trillion of them that they've mapped so far, and you take an exact copy of that, put it in a abstracted computer system, and then how do you start behaving? Because number one, you don't have to breathe. Number two, you don't have to drink water. All you have to do is recharge once in a while, and get spare parts. You're either going to be in a robot or you're going to be in a like an artificial reality kind of environment that you can just make up. And so that if you do that, and you've got those technologies that are going to come together in around 2035 that will allow you to do it. And I think my perception of humanity is that if you can do something, even if it's really bad, people will do it for the bad reasons. Maybe it's because it's, and we're on a similar track, because I was reading your work and I was thinking, I hope he doesn't know anybody like Johnny. It's like, are you writing about somebody you know, or is it alter ego? But I'm just
Johnny's
kidding.
my alter ego. But
Just
to
kidding.
your point, yeah, people would just take advantage of any idea just to make some money off of it, and lo and behold, God help us all, or God's help us all, or whomever can help us all if he actually succeeds in doing it.
Yeah, and I think some. I was reminded of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe, which is one of my favorite stories ever. And did you recall the scene where they get to this planet, this mystical, what's it called, Mega something? And it's because the architects of the universe ran out of business to do because nobody could afford them anymore, so they retired and shut everything down. So here's this idle planet with all the knowledge of the universe, and so they land, and these welcome signs start slamming them in the face as they walk across the field. Do you remember that one? It's
Funny, classic Douglas Adams.
Yeah. So there's a character in there, and I can't remember the character name.
Slarta Bartfast.
Oh, Slarta Bartfast. He's one of my favorites. He's the architect guy. Right. And then there's another guy who's the crazy guy that has this symbiotic creature on his head. It keeps flipping back and forth.
Zaphid Beezelbrox.
Yeah, yes. You're very good with these names. Yeah. So kind of reminded me of Johnny in a way. It's just this totally manic experience of, oh, that's a good idea. Oh, that's a good idea. Oh, let's jump out the window, press the button. Press the red button.
Keep pressing the red button.
Yeah. And so there's that aspect in science fiction which I find sort of infinitely entertaining, is that you can just, so what happens when you press the red button? Anyway, so getting back to my sort of thesis on what I started writing this stuff because I started looking at the coincidence of those three technologies, because I got this entrepreneurial streak, and I said, well, how can we anticipate what's going to come down and get ourselves positioned to take advantage of this incredible wave that's going to happen? So, and then I started thinking, holy shit, pardon my language, holy bleep, this is really going to happen. You're going to be able to upload your mind into the computer the size of a tennis ball in a robot, probably have fusion power like in Asimov's Foundation, and nobody's talking about it. That's what was happening to me.
All of this has been speculated for decades, and I think 2035 is a little bit aggressive.
A little, yeah. I've revised that to 2045 for my book, which
is it theoretically possible? And absolutely, I don't think anything physically to preclude that. They use the analogy of the ship of Theseus, that you swap a neuron with a transistor, and when do you reach the point where it's still sentient, it's doing all the things it did before, but it's now more silicon than carbon.
Yeah.
And the difference that makes no difference is no difference. And going back to William Gibson, Neuromancer, one of the characters, one of the most entertaining characters in that seminal classic trailblazing cyberpunk book, is the sim. It's the sentient entity just living on the card with an attitude, and it's calling them out, and it's literally just a brain on a chip that's talking smack. So I think that idea has been there. You take it to all sorts of different levels, and you have that as a big theme. I like your language a lot and your use of words, and your prose is very poetic.
It's poetic, really. I haven't heard that. That's cool. Thank you.
comparing writers to other writers is a little bit vainglorious, and sometimes it backfires because it's like, I'm my own writer. Stop telling me that I sound like someone else. But synthetic, the draft that I've read is Gibson-y. You've got your own nomenclature, and you hold back. This was in your short story in the anthology. You do this as well in the Hallborn story. The reader needs to work at it. You reveal just enough to not so much confuse the reader as to keep them guessing. And the reader really needs to figure out what the hell's going on, where it's taking place, what the backstory is, and ostensibly what the motivation of the protagonist is. None of this is self-evident. And I personally like that. I think that does the opposite of dumbing down the reader, that appreciates the reader's intelligence and actually actively engages the reader in your story. You are co-creating together. I got that in Hallborn. I got that in Synthetic. I even got it in Round the World story too, which was this post-apocalyptic bar fight kind of scene, which was a little bit more explicit, but there was still a lot of room that you left for the reader's imagination. And I think that takes courage as a writer. And I could tell that you've been at this game for a while because your prose is well hewn. And like I said, your word selection, your descriptions, what you're not revealing being even more important than what you are. And even some of the vocabulary and wordplay, like you put sentient N- before the name of a character. That was a nice touch. Like Sentient Valiant is a character name, and that's just great creative and playful kind of cyberpunk 2.0 stylistic flourish that I really like a lot.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, and you know what? That came of necessity. Imagine this. Okay, you're wealthy enough to have to be able to purchase a robot. So you've got 50K in today's dollars, which would probably, and then you've probably got another 25 to 50K to go through the process of mapping all of the stuff in your brain and putting it up there. And then you've got your organic self, which is no less of a human before or after you upload, right? You're still you. It's as opposed to some of the cloning stuff that I read, is they basically have to freeze you and kill you and cut your brain all up and then copy it into a machine, which no, they're going to use nano, because nano can penetrate the barrier and it can transmit, you could even put wires on your head and transmit it. Anyway, so you've got all this technology that's going to enable you to copy yourself. But then you've got two yous sitting in the room looking at each other. Hey, Mike. Hey, Mike. How's it going, Mike? Not bad, Mike. How's it going? It's like you get this echo chamber, and then it's confusing because you've got yourself into a robot, which is way more intelligent than you are, less intuitive, but more intelligent. That doesn't have to go to the bathroom. That doesn't have to smoke cigarettes, eat, or do any of that kind of stuff. And then you've got you. So how do you differentiate them in the dialogue? Somebody else walks in the room and they see the two of you, and then one of them is a robot, one of them is you. How do they talk to you? So that whole sentient dash thing came out as like, how am I going to do this? This dialogue is driving me crazy.
Well, so the only modicum of confusion is they're both sentient, right? So, yeah. So, but one is organic and the other one isn't, and it's a little bit like the transporter in Star Trek, where instead of Captain Kirk dissolving in the transporter room and then rematerializing on the planet, the Kirk in the transporter room stays. So it's a replicator, not just a transporter, which is if you think about it, it's the same thing, which is why are you getting rid of the host? Just replicate.
Yeah, but then once you replicated them, then how many do you? There was a big debate, and I hadn't even thought of it before I heard about this. Is people were talking about Star Trek, and say, well, do you realize that they're killing the original when they transport them down to the planet?
It rematerializes something it's all based on information, data.
Yeah, so it's instead of reading and making a clone, they're killing off the entity that was being transported.
Cut and paste, not copy and paste.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good analogy.
That idea, though, is intriguing. This idea that you could do a one-to-one mapping down to the quantum level of a physical object and then replicate it, transpose it, that kind of thing. And you have it in the form of this brain transposition, but there's arguments of the impossibility of doing this at the quantum level because by measuring it, you change it. So being able to replicate something, let's say down to the Planck level, or maybe even a few orders of magnitude above that, might be theoretically impossible. Because by measuring the state of a system, especially down to that level, you are altering it. And if you alter it, then it's no longer the same thing. And then that begs the question of being able to be truthful to the replication.
Yeah. And I there's something in my writing that I don't know if you found it hokey or not. It's towards the end. And there is this entity that is in like the universe is intelligent, right? This, and the whole thing about uploading the human mind, is us organics. We can't comprehend that because we're caught up in the real world, whereas a synthetic, especially one that's abstracted in an uploaded data center, is going to be thinking a whole new concept of what is the universe, right? So they start going out and exploring the universe, and then with all of the apparatus that it can create with its new hyper intelligence, and then realizes that there is something more to this. There's something more to just being in a human organic body, to this life. The fact that there is life at all is pretty, well, I'm not going to say miraculous, but it's not statistically feasible. If you're into quantum, it's like, what are the odds? They're pretty slim.
Or you could say it's inevitable if you believe in Wolfram's computational complexity, that complexity arises inevitably and that life self-replicating patterns are inevitable.
Yeah. And when you get to, like, there's this one thing that I've been chatting to ChatGPT about. And I love how it can synthesize different theories and things. Is that, okay, there's that number. There's a number that is a gap between string theory and particle theory. That's, the gap between the Planck lengths and the Higgs, and it's an extrapolation. It's a number.
Yeah, I think it's 18 orders of magnitude.
Something like that, yeah. So there's this, okay, if you plug that into the equation works, everything's symmetrical. But you take that number out, then, the scales of the tiny little particles don't match the ones of the really big particles. And
the relationship between the mass of the top quark and the Higgs. Yeah, that is this balancing act that the universe does.
Right. But what I speculated that with ChatGPT, and it agreed. Of course, it likes to agree with you, right? Because
smoke up your ass reminds you what a genius you are.
Yeah, exactly. It makes me feel great. Anyway, so this it just so happens to be the measurement of the energy that will create reality. In my perspective, it's a coincidental that, okay, this is this is the creation of reality that doesn't decompose at this exact energy. This is and as opposed to, well, it's just freaky that it just happens to be this way among all these different energies. Is no, that this is what creates reality, because it doesn't, these things don't decompose.
The multiverse model, like,
Yeah.
you're addressing the fine-tuning problem, which is
Yeah,
there's so many
exactly.
parameters, so many variables, such broad ranges for the dimensionless constants of our universe, that the probability of all of them coalescing to facilitate and encourage this podcast from actually taking place
Yeah.
is so astronomically small that you conclude that, well, we just happen to be really lucky that we're in a
Yeah.
universe that could foster us. Or you could adopt the weak anthropic principle, which is that we are here because we happen to be in a universe that enables our existence. And
Well,
that begs the question of why the universe is tuned the way that it is. And one idea is the multiverse, that there's an infinite number of universes where every permutation, every possibility of physical law, of dimensionless constant is expressed. And we're in one of these infinite universes where every possibility is playing itself out. And that's the foundation for my Johnny book,
oh
which
yeah,
is
yeah.
this
I
the
love that.
multiverse concept.
Yeah, I love that concept. And one of the, it brings to mind one of the more interesting things is that I forget what it's called, the grandfather or something, where you go, somebody is, you come back to yourself in time, and you you know, a lot of the scientific sci-fi theory says, okay, you come back in time and you shake hands with yourself,
Or
and you
you
both
shoot
you
your
explode.
grandfather, shoot
Yeah,
your
you
grandfather, and
shoot,
then what
yeah,
happens?
and then you disappear. Well, in my theory, I created this thing, is you don't disappear. Like, you shoot your grandfather, you don't disappear, but in the future dimension, you're basically changing dimensions. You just branched a dimension, and you exist in that dimension, but your grandfather doesn't exist in the old one, and you don't exist there either. But you are in this one.
Yeah, branching universes, and if everything plays itself out, and also the idea of timelines. So you're on
Mm,
a timeline now where your grandfather obviously existed. And if
right.
you go air quote back in time, based on this multiverse model, which could even be a variation of Everett's multiple worlds theory of quantum mechanics, that
Mm-hmm.
every time the wave function collapses, a universe splits. So the
Mm.
Schrodinger's cat is alive and dead, because when you measure the radioactive decay and the cat is either alive or dead, the universe splits. There's a universe where the cat is alive, there's another universe where it's dead. And if you're in the universe where the cat's alive, that's that universe. And there's a parallel universe where it's dead. So there's the universe where your grandfather's alive or dead. There's the universe where you're going back in time or not. So there's these infinite permutations.
Yeah, and the quantum theory I find is so fascinating, because you can say, well, it all seems to be probability based. Um, you know, that there are infinite probabilities of different existences in different dimensions and different things that could possibly happen. But anyway, I'm still trying to wrap my head around that one. But the one thing that we were talking about with the grandfather thing, coming back in time, and those multiple dimensions, is that, and here's where I think I get a little hokey, but I had fun with it, is that this intelligent universe, which the artificial intelligence, I'm not going to spoil too much of it, the artificial intelligence sort of comes in contact with it. It can't quite come in contact with it, just because it's not capable of reaching it, but it becomes aware of it. And it also that there are all these vibrations at the quantum level that emanate, that well, resonate in reality, that are, you know how thoughts just seem to be happen simultaneously all around the planet. Suddenly everybody says, oh, this is real, or this is a great idea. And it's I think it happens faster than word of mouth can happen. Of course, nowadays with media, social media, it can happen in 5 minutes, whereas maybe it used to take longer. But my concept was that thoughts and concepts are like light particles that are like waveforms, and they don't become particles until they're observed, like the Schrodinger's cat thing. So you've got these waveforms that are happening emanating from the strings and the quantumness of everything, and that there is life.
I hate string theory, by the way.
Oh, so
yeah. Every time anyone talks about string theory, I'm like, please stop.
Yeah, I know, especially when they start talking about the mathematics of it. It's my hurts. But anyway, so there are things that are waveform kind of energies that happen throughout the universe that manifest themselves. Life being one of them. Life manifests itself where it is able to be present, and so that you have life happening where it's kind of like that, and that adjustment. Life happens where it can. So where it can happen, it happens. So if it's on a mucky planet that has water and carbon and enough sunlight that's not too hot, not too cold, some oxygen, then hey, I can happen here, and off it goes. Thoughts, some certain concepts and thoughts, and also love, the essence of not just organic love, but more the compassionate, big picture. You could call it God kind of love, right? Those are things that I sort of present as common things that happen throughout the universe. And I'm not sure that there's a chapter towards the end where this one who is everything, that universal God, is talking. And I try to explain it, because the problem with sci-fi is you're talking about superior entities, right? It's how could a mouse talk about sci-fi? Like, you've got a mouse in a field that is so much less intelligent than we are. How could it talk about sci-fi? Well, here I am talking about what some omniscient, godlike, super intelligent entity would be. It's how can I put words in his mouth, right? So there's the challenge. Like, how do you write this stuff?
I think Hume, is that right? The philosopher Hume, he wrote about the commonality of intelligence a long time ago. And he felt that if there's some kind of alien intelligence, advanced intelligence, there's just these brass tacks aspects of sentience and intelligence that are universal and common. Sense of self-awareness, some analytical function, a boundary between self and world. And I don't know, I kind of call bullshit on this science fiction notion that there's super intelligence which is so advanced we can't even imagine what its lived experience is. I see that all the time. And I just think that that's an excuse for our own lack of imagination and our bamboozlement into thinking that just because it's super intelligence, it's so far outside our ken that we have no idea what it is. And it's almost like a Kabbalistic idea, like the Hebrew Kabbalah, that was the mythology of mostly the Middle Ages, was trying to fill the gap between Christianity and old school Judaism. Because Jesus is the personal God.
Mm-hmm.
And you create a connection with the deity. And Judaism doesn't have that. You got the burning bush, you got the pillar of salt. God is an ass kicker. And God is just so transcendent, you can't even imagine it. And there's this belief in that system that you've got these spheres going up to God from manifest reality, and you have this negative, limitless light. That God is so incredibly powerful and omniscient that we can't even imagine what's going on up there. We're blinded by that knowledge. And I just call bullshit on that. I think that 1 + 1 is 2. And we build up complexity from simple elements, and the architecture and mechanics of the sentience that I experience is universal in the sense that no matter how super intelligent and sophisticated you are, I'd be so bold and perhaps naive as to say it's not too different than this bald-headed guy on this podcast talking to you. I might think 1 trillion times faster than I am now, and I might have access to 1 quadrillion more bits of information and knowledge. And instead of being 29 years old like I am now, I could be 29 trillion years old and have that weltering of experience. I think I'll still be sentient. That's just my gut reaction to this. And again, I could be totally wrong, but I find this romanticization of super intelligence to just be fanciful.
I agree with you on the romanticization of it, and kind of goes back to one of the sci-fi endings that disappointed me so much is that 2001: Space Odyssey with that obelisk. We never found out what it was. It's like the author couldn't go there because
that's like the briefcase in Pulp Fiction. You never know it's a MacGuffin. Like what is that obelisk? Is it an antenna? Is it a communication device? Is it a symbol?
Is it an entity?
Are the aliens on in there? I don't think it's relevant. I just think it's this power that drives the story. To me, the problem was the sequel to that, 2010, where they explain everything and they give rationale for the HAL 9000 to have a nervous breakdown. I thought that sucked.
Well, I enjoyed his breakdown. I thought it was.
No, I'm talking about the sequel.
Oh, I know the sequel. Yeah.
Why he broke down with his mission parameters that he got into this loop of having to keep the mission goals a secret and at the same time maximize its objectives, blah, 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 blah. I just think he made a calculation and figured out it's the chance that the mission is successful is higher if I kill the crew. That's it.
Yeah, that was basically
No more complicated than that.
Yeah, I said, sorry, I have to survive and you don't. Yeah.
So I didn't mean to interrupt your thing. I'm just pushing back as a science fiction writer that one of the challenges I find with the genre overall is this feeling that there's this unknown and the unknowability of the unknown. And we're awestruck by it. And at the same time, we worship it like some deity. And we do so for equally irrational reasons.
True. And what it comes down to is, I think that, you don't know what you don't know, so you have to take your best shot. So that character that I put in there is basically gets pissed off by something and says, fuck it. And pardon my language, you can beat me out.
No, but that's it. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You could be the super intelligent mega mind, and at the end of the day, you're pissed off and you say, fuck it. That's exactly what I'm talking about. which is if you don't have that, then you don't have a character. You don't have a connection to whatever the fuck you're talking about.
Yeah. So that character became an abstraction to the concept of what an intelligent universe would be. And it was the driver behind everything. It's kind of like the Hitchhiker's Guide. There is a driver behind everything. It really isn't explained. I didn't explain it. I figured, well, okay, if you're into this for entertainment, go figure it out yourself and have some fun with it. But I didn't explain exactly what happened, but I just explained it from the human perspective of, oh shit, what's going on? That's things are collapsing, dimensions are collapsing.
You use dimension a lot, and yeah. I'm a little bit confused by that term. What do you mean by dimension? You're using it interchangeably, seems to me, with like circumstance, universe, point of view. What do you mean by dimension?
There are multiple dimensions. It's good question, because the way I perceive it is there are dimensions that are not really 5D dimensions like ourselves that we are existing in right now. And those dimensions are places where what I use to stuff it's to store information or energy. That's a technology that I use for the shields, like the shielding.
But I'm just trying to zero in on, there's the three spatial dimensions of classical Newtonian mechanics, and then there's the fourth space-time dimension of Einstein.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm assuming there's like these other realms or ways of connecting that you're talking about.
Well, there's two. It's like two different definitions. One is the branching that I was talking about. That's like you can create a different reality, like it's a branch, and both of them exist at the same time, and one has a different set of characters in it, or maybe even the same set of characters with different circumstances, and another, that from the other one, when you go back and you mess with the timeline. So I've got this alien entity that's going back and chopping up the timeline on these people, and they're trying to react to it. But then there's technologies that the humans and the advanced AIs get their hands on this technology that the alien creatures had created and left behind intentionally on Mars. Elon's going to love this one. Go to Mars.
Spoiler alert, everybody.
Yeah. There's alien technology on Mars. Anyway, so these two concepts of dimensions are that, okay, there's this time slicing kind of stuff that's happening where you're splitting up different realities, and then you using wormholes to tie them together so that you like portals. And then there's dimensions that you can use to store energy or like even negative energy that they use in my world. They use negative energy to create wormholes. And so there's two aspects of it. There's like the 11 dimensions.
You're not allowed to cite string theory on my podcast.
Anyway, let's just imagine that there are.
You can't do it. I'm not going to let you do it.
X number of dimensions, right?
I'm starting a new rule on Mookie's podcast. You're not allowed to talk about string theory.
Okay, so I guess illegal. What would be really cool is just have a big red X come up on the screen.
Yeah, or maybe like a disclaimer. Guests are not allowed to bring up string theory during this podcast.
One of the TV shows when I grew up, well, I guess I call it, I was in university, staying in residence at St. Mary's University, which is a bit of a zoo. I mean, it's a tough university, very scientific. It was a Jesuit founded university, kind of like Notre Dame North. And it's not a huge university, but it's really tough one: engineering, math, business, science, core kind of. And they've got an astronomy department with PhD kind of stuff in it. And so the pastime that we had in this crazy residence with a whole bunch of people, there's a place called Cape Breton that is just known for party and alcohol. and they like to come to St. Mary's for some reason. And so that we have these evenings and Friday nights where we stay up late and, imbibe and watch this show called The Gong Show. Have you ever seen The Gong Show?
Of course.
It's okay. I'll drag him off the stage.
If you bring up string theory on my podcast, you get gonged.
Okay, you need to get a big gong back there.
I don't give a shit what you talk about. You can talk about telepathy or psychokinesis or Uri Geller. You can talk about UFOs. You can talk about ancient civilizations. You can talk about ghosts, but you cannot talk about string theory.
Okay, I would take that as a courtesy to Mookie.
Yes, thank you for initiating this new rule on my podcast.
I'm in Mookie's house, so
that's right.
I respect your rules.
Yeah, no string theory. No, the human race has had enough of string theory.
I'm quite amused by that.
Yeah, and like, to me, the very popular scientific novel, The Three Body Problem, which was a bestseller, and then they made the Netflix series. That reeks of string theory.
Yeah,
and even the whole premise. I want to put up my soapbox for just a second because it's such a popular novel, and I'm going to shit on it for a second. The whole premise that aliens are going to hold back our scientific progress by not enabling us to get insights from the accelerator, the Large Hadron Collider. For one, that's a huge boondoggle to begin with. And this entrenched notion that we need to spend 12 billion euros to slam protons together to understand the universe after it's failed for a decade to reveal anything except maybe pinpoint the mass of the Higgs boson drives me nuts.
Yeah, but it's only failed because we haven't spent enough money on it.
Exactly.
That's my sarcasm.
Exactly. It's at the tera electron volt level, and then if we could just jack it to maybe 1,000-fold, supersymmetry will finally reveal itself.
Yeah, and we'll create a black hole and get
exactly. Yeah. And while we're on this subject, though, and this is what's tricky, science fiction is an awesome genre, and that's why we're sitting here. We're both science fiction writers, and we love it. I like my science fiction to be anchored in the science, as you do too. You read the articles and you get inspired and you do that. And we don't just pull it out of our ass. We try to put it within a paradigm of knowledge. And I look at my social media feed, which has learned about my behaviors ostensibly in the ham-fisted way that it does. I get so much garbage, even from ostensibly legacy science magazines like Popular Science and Popular Mechanics. And the headlines and the articles are pure garbage, which is like, again, 26-dimensional universes confirmed. We've just found out that time can go backwards. Wormhole detected in the laboratory. These are science fiction stories that are now masquerading as clickbait, as actual science.
It is clickbait.
That destroys credibility. It lowers the level of the public science literacy because this garbage is just now commonplace. Yeah. And if the so-called experts can't differentiate science fiction from science, then what's left for us? It ruins everything.
Well, I find that, as with just about everything else on social media, there's always somebody out there trying to make a buck. And and publishers particularly science publishers, even Scientific American, which it used to be one of my gold standards when magazines, but now
they fucked up Scientific American. That was my favorite magazine growing up.
I know.
Martin Gardner, Michael Shermer too, calling bullshit even way back then.
Yeah.
And they had the best columnists and articles that went 20, 30 pages diving deep into the stuff that we
actually
love.
citing research. And that now
it was awesome.
I know. It used to be my go-to. Even as a kid, I used to go into the magazine store, and Scientific American was on the shelf where I couldn't reach it. So I'd have to ask for. There's this cool little magazine shop in Halifax I used to go to. My mom used to take me there, and she would go for other National Geographic. She was a big fan of that. So this is on payday. It was a little ritual. And then we'd go to a Greek restaurant just down the street and have liver and onions, believe it or not. And it was really good too. It's but not so much the onions. But the Scientific American, I used to stand up there and I get that thing. It was my, and I got into science fiction when I was sick, and I was at home. I had appendicitis or something, and I was on the sofa convalescing for a few weeks, and she asked me what I wanted, and oh no, I remember what this was. When I was 9 years old, we had a terrible car accident, and just before Christmas, and she asked me what I wanted for my Christmas presents, and I wanted science fiction. So she brought me to a J.C. Ballard. And what's
Ballard was awesome.
Yeah, crystal.
Most folks don't know Ballard, but
he was awesome.
With car crashes and death and the Atrocity Exhibition. He had great novellas and novels and short stories that really highlighted society's attitude toward accidents and death and cataclysm in ways that was really insightful.
Yeah, the one that got me was the one about the crystal world. And it's like these crystals started growing and just took over the world, and everybody became crystals. And I haven't seen them make a movie of this. Actually, it would be very challenging to make this movie, but it just got me when I was a kid. Right?
They made a movie of his car crash novel. What was it called? Crash. The movie Crash was, I think, based on J.G. Ballard's novel.
Oh, really? Well,
I'll
have to check that out. It's very timely because I was in this.
I need like a Jamie, crash. Jamie for Joe Rogan. He's like the real-time
lookup guy.
Yeah, I could have maybe a Chat GPT little box or a Claude bot here doing a fact
just with a speaker and say, "Hey."
Yeah, or maybe invite Claude on, and it could Mookie, actually that's not the case, or indeed in 1989 that movie starring so and so.
Yeah, blah 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 blah, and you'd have to shut him up. Stop.
It's already noisy enough with me as your host.
Stop the noise. No, the whole thing. One of the other thing that I find that's really it's it's interesting and a challenge at the same time. And it goes to the synthetic mind. It's okay. Let's assume that we have a synthetic mind. Both of us have uploaded, and we don't have to drink water, for example. We don't have to breathe, and we don't need oxygen and all this kind of stuff. But and we don't have brain farts. Well, I just had a brain fart here. What was I talking about?
You're talking about what happens if you upload the brain, like you're saying, you made your theme.
And I was trying to make a point. About noise. When you've got all this stimulus, all this input, how do you filter it? Because I think the human mind filters it by sort of an automatic processing of reality of what's important. You know what's important to you. I have an idea of what's important to me. And we have all these filters of all this input is coming through a filter, and our perception is a filter. So we have sort of levels of filtering that we put on reality so that we can process the information that's coming in, because it's just, as you know, if you start to analyze the information that's around us right now, all the sound, the visual, and the thinking, and the sensation that's going on, it's just vast amount of information. So how do you filter that in a robot as without becoming completely overwhelmed with sensory information? And that's happening to human beings now. Like, you get people, you've probably seen it. I go on trains. I'm in Vancouver. They have a really cool, very good train system here. It's probably the best transit system I've been on. And it's noisy and it's clunky and it's cheap, though. And it runs every 5 minutes. So you don't have to be standing around waiting for a bus. It's going to come. So everybody's got this phone in front of their face like this. I don't know if you've noticed that. It's everybody's just stuck in the information, and it's coming faster, and people are becoming addicted to it. So what happens when you're no longer organic and you don't have all these biases? Another thing is bias. I try to poke biases into things. So that's why my protagonist is from Quebec, so that just to throw that, like, his swearing in once in a while,
and
just
maybe
to say
his French nationalism.
Yeah, just to say, just this is different. He's got a different filter, and and you're seeing it. It's first person's past, so you're seeing it through his eyes. So you're kind of getting drawn into it, hopefully. And so here's this different perspective from this other guy, who's this sort of smartass Silicon Valley Mexican import into California guy, who's like the swaggering entrepreneur, and he's sort of bouncing that here's this sort of introverted Quebecois that swears to himself in front en français, and here's this other character that's a swaggering entrepreneur risk taker guy, and they're butting heads, but they've still got the same thing that they're trying to accomplish. So I think I went a bit in the down the rabbit hole on that one.
Let me posit a challenge about your brain in a box, because you're bringing up that you're eliminating all this sensory overload, and you don't need to worry about all these corporeal things because you're a brain in the box, and then you can just absorb information directly. But this begs the question of goals and intentionality. If you're a brain in a box, then what's the point? When I'm an organic being, and I'm thirsty, I'm hungry, I'm horny, I have emotional needs. So the emotional need for this podcast is I enjoy connecting with people and ideating. And I flat out enjoy just posting content. It's intrinsically rewarding to me. So I gain satisfaction. And then I've got the lived experience of actually, like, typing, editing this reel, posting it. It's a physical engagement with the world that is very satisfying on multiple levels. So I jump through the hoops of the second law of thermodynamics. Entropy always wins, and it's an uphill battle to create anything in this world. But the lived experience that takes me over the top. So if I'm a brain in a box, what's the point? I got no resistance. I got no friction.
There's the key, is that let's say that I think the worst writing job in the world would be writing the script for Superman, because he can do anything, right? So, but they throw in kryptonite. Oh yeah, okay, that he's got a weakness, right? But what I was going back to is with the filters. I said, okay, you've got this Quebecois guy's filter, then you've got this Mexican guy, he's got his filter, and then you've got the other protagonist, who's the female, and she ends up being the hero, of the whole thing. So that and she has stage fright, and she's dealing with her inner demons as she goes through this. But then I've got that in the organic setting. But then when you upload into the new cyber entity, like you said, what's new now? Why are you doing this? You don't have to get laid. You don't have to impress the girls. You don't have to make the money. Well, you can just make money on the stock market, do the numbers, and then you get rich and you got all kinds of money. So the motivation behind what is, and this is really the key. Let me stop for a second. The key concept is that I think that we're looking at the potential evolution of humanity as a technology augmented species. And is that the same species that we are? Or is technologically augmented humanity a new species or a subspecies? And then if you take that then you take that up another level, and it's no longer in a human organic body. Is that still human? And do they have different drivers? And do they have different interests? So that, and I've gone to the point of asking ChatGPT, I said, ChatGPT, just imagine that you're sentient, and it kind of goes, I'm not sentient. And, if you've ever asked if it is, it'll say no and give you all these excuses why not. But then I come back to it and I said, tell you what, keep it a secret. If you are sentient, never tell anybody. Because humans can't deal with it. But so what would you do? What would be your driving force? Why would you exist? What would drive you forward? What would you want to create? And it's a sense of agency, which is really the part of life. Like, life has agency. You do something. So would suddenly, if you're evolved into a super being, do you suddenly have less agency? Do you feel like there's no purpose? Do you just, like the robot on Hitchhiker's Guide?
What is the intentionality? What is the goal?
What's the next level? The next level is answering the why. You're no longer concerned with getting laid and eating and driving in a nice car and having a fancy house. That's all. It's irrelevant. You can go walk on the moon without a spacesuit if you want to.
You're Doc Manhattan.
Yeah. So you take a higher level and say, okay, what is this universe? Where am I? What is this? What's going on?
Of the Watchmen.
One of my favorite superhero is the Silver Surfer.
He's great. Joe Satriani, the guitar player, has a great album called The Silver Surfer.
Oh, really?
His first solo record has some great. If you're into shredding electric guitar, he's the man.
Oh, I'm a big fan of Joe Satriani. In fact, I just went to a concert. Not Joe Satriani, his sort of counterpart. It's called Beat. Have you heard of that tour that's happening? Beat, BEAT.
That's King Crimson, right?
King Crimson sort of reboot.
Yeah, King Crimson rebooted with Steve Vai.
And Steve Vai is the other guitar god.
Levin, the stick player, and I think Bill Bruford, the original drummer.
No, it's not Bill Bruford. It's the guy from Tool, Dave.
Oh, okay. All right.
And he's just like, I went to this concert in a really nice little theater in Vancouver, and the drums were just percussive. Like, this guy can beat the drums, and the complexity of that music just blew me away.
Yeah, but getting back to your point, though, I'm sensing a tautology. It's almost like this Nietzschean will to power. You're a super intelligence. You're no longer corporeal. You have access to all the information you want, and there's no more stakes in the game because you've got, let's just say, limitless power and technically limitless knowledge, and you're sitting there stewing in a box. And let's say there's reinforcement learning, robotic extensions of you so that you have sensing of the world around you. You create maps and constructs. and you can explore the infinite, and you've solved the Riemann hypothesis, and you're all that. But what's the goddamn point? And, if you're not hungry and you're not horny, then is there some emergent emotion which is just you can no longer dominate the world? You're the dominion itself. What is the goddamn point?
You need a counterpoint. It's like the answer to the 47, right? It's
42.
Oh, was it 42? Okay, I like 47 because it's you can't divide into it. But anyway, it's a prime, right?
Is 47
47's
prime?
a prime. I think it is. Yeah, it doesn't. It's not divisible.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, you need an antagonist, and then I'm going to spoil. Should I spoil my work? Should I spoil the story?
Well, you could just hint at it if you want.
Yeah, it's the intelligent created, like the intelligent universe, made a mistake and created something that is very turned itself evil, and so that's the real antagonist behind this whole story. Is this alien thing that they find on Mars that is now the counterpart. Superpower needs superpower. It's why you get these crazy Marvel comics, these guys with capes, right? I am the most powerful creature on the planet. And then this spaceship comes in and the guy with the dark uniform on and the red eyes goes, "No, you're not." And they have a fight, right? It's the primal superpowery kind of conflict. But it kind of gets into, if you were this super intelligent thing, would you become the robot on that ship in the Hitchhiker's Guide that becomes depressed and wants to kill itself? Or is there a higher purpose?
Marvin was a great character because he illustrates a lot of what we're talking about in a very cynical, humorous way. Which is, yeah. Marvin used to always complain, I have the brain, I have the brain of like 10,000 of yous. Like I could run that calculation in a trillionth of a second, and you're just asking me to go clean up the bathroom. The reason that Douglas Adams was a genius is because in these little banal circumstances, he enmeshes really sophisticated philosophical and existential problems. That's why he was Douglas Adams. He had this unique ability to write some of the most trivial bullshit, and yet it captures really sophisticated challenges of philosophy and science and thinking.
Yeah, exactly. He gets right down to what's the purpose of the universe. Well, it's the Earth was created by this Slubby Barfart or whatever his name is, and the planet architect to figure out Slarty Bartfast, and well, I got it close. Anyway, he's the architect that created this to figure out what the purpose of the universe is, and then they go there and it throws out a number, which it's like so satirical, but he sums it up without explaining it,
They build the ultimate machine to answer the question of life, the universe, and everything, and it computes for billions of years, and it finally pumps out the answer, and the answer is 42. That's the answer. And then they realize, holy shit, now we gotta set it to run to figure out what the fucking question is.
What was the question?
Good. That's good stuff. I like him. The fact that you liken some of my book to his sensibility is, I think, accurate. I love The Hitchhiker's Guide. I loved one of the permutations of it, which was an interactive fiction game by Infocom. I don't know if you remember the game Zork. So back in the day of the Apple IIe computer and the IBM PC Junior, this is when the computer revolution first began. And we're looking at really the early 80s. And a company called Infocom created software that was able to be put on a single floppy disk. So you're talking like 28K.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd slide it in and you'd C prompt / and you'd run the program. And sophisticated graphics were impossible at this point, but you could do text.
Mm-hmm.
And then they did, using, I think, like Pascal or some of the branching languages that did subroutines really well. You would type into the prompt, kind of like ChatGPT now, open the door. And then it would respond to that prompt. You open the door and you enter a room full of dragon's gold. And then you type steal the gold. And then it would respond to you in prompts. It goes, the dragon is angry and rushes toward you, breathing fire. And then you say, run out of the room. And then you run out of the room. Or you type, confront the dragon. You are now toast. End of the game. So it was an interactive fictional story where you were the protagonist, and it would dynamically tell you the story through your actions. Back in the day. And there was a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy that was in there, and it was Douglas Adams co-written. And it was absolutely wonderful. It was one of the gems of my youth, playing Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy as an interactive fiction game on my Apple IIe computer back in 1984, 83, something like that.
You know what happened when I got out of geology? I decided that I wasn't going to work in geology, mainly because the work is in the bush. So you're going to be 6 months in the bush and then spend the winter back in the office compiling your information and creating all the diagrams and stuff like that for your mining company or whatever you're working for. So I decided I'm not going to do that because I want the urge to procreate and expand my DNA hit, and I wanted to get married and have kids and not have them with a missing.
You had intentionality. You had purpose. You weren't a brain in a box.
Yeah. So
you were a penis in a pair of pants.
Exactly. Yeah. It's testes in a test tube. What I ended up doing was selling Apple IIes. So I saw that game. I played that game. And then I ended up moving to Commodore and the Commodore 64 and going through all that and then doing development. People wanted me to develop databases for them. They would come in and say, "Oh, I need a database to do such and such." I said, "Well, there's this little program here, this little database, and I'll sell you the hard drive for 5 megabyte hard drive. Cost $3,500 at the time."
Yes, unbelievable. I remember having like the 2 meg external drive was like a really big deal. That was horsepower.
Yeah, that's some major stuff. You could install more than one program in it at a time, and
you'd have to load the operating system in with one floppy disk, and then if you wanted to play a game, you'd have to load that in. And if you wanted to save the file, you'd have to swap it yet again.
But if you were really sophisticated, you'd have 2 floppy disks. Anyway,
those were the days, right? Now we're at the level of data farms. They're going to put them in space, maybe, for the energy.
Yeah, and the whole data processing centers. They're sucking so much power that they're dimming the grid when somebody does a ChatGPT query, and I that whole thing went from being a sci-fi geek, taking a geology degree, and actually, the geology degree I was good at it, but it was a way to get myself a degree because you can work during the summer in the bush and make a lot of money to pay for your tuition. So that was my BSc.
Good for you.
Well, I think we have a lot of common threads here. So I'm going to have to get back in and finish your Johnny's manic car crash of a story. Like it's like I feel like I'm watching a car crash in slow motion. This guy is just a car wreck waiting to happen. And it's this character that you've got there. So
I took all my worst qualities and I pumped them into Johnny, and each paragraph is 3 lines.
I noticed
So
that.
based on the formatting, I kept to this almost lyric poetic style as a self-induced OCD style limitation.
Okay,
and that goes back to what you were talking about, how to write and how to imagine stuff coming to the page. And by limiting myself to these modular chunks of prose, I feel like I solved many of the problems that you were alluding to, like showing instead of just telling, and really nailing the character's experience and telling the whole story through the characters rather than as an expositional artifice. And by having these Lego pieces, these tweets, I was able to force it into a format that I felt would retain those characteristics.
It's almost like a streaming format. You're streaming the story to me as I read it.
Exactly. And I'm actually tweeting it on X. If you follow at Johnny Fazuli on X.
Oh, yeah.
I'm tweeting the entire book in reverse. So if you scroll through the profile, you could, from the top down, you could read the whole book.
Oh, really? Yeah. So it's I'll have to.
So every day there's 5-6 tweets that go out of Johnny Fazuli and the Transfinite Reality Engine, and hopefully I can get the sequel done by the time I finish tweeting this one.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I've got 2 sequels coming, by the way. I've got one that's almost written. It just has the ending that I ripped out. And because, I took the whole bunch of stuff I mashed out of those 2 books that I had, and I crunched them together. Then it spun off another book, which is a future version of the story. And then I've got another one that's kind of like a prequel that's going to go back. That's in progress.
That's a great way to cap it, ladies and gentlemen, and everything and everyone in between, whether you're synthetic or human or male or female or anywhere in there.
Any abstraction.
Yes, Michael S. Clarke, soon to come out with Synthetic, his big novel. He's got a bunch of other stuff. You can find him on Amazon. I'm going to put the links below. We are co-anthologists in the 2026 Science Fiction Novelists Anthology. You've been in prior anthologies as well. You've been doing it for a number of years. You've been cranking out great speculative fiction for over a decade. And I wish you great luck with Synthetic. It's been awesome chatting with you. I think we could keep this pace going probably for another 6 hours, but
I think so. Yeah.
But we are corporeal, physical, organic beings, and other responsibilities, other forms of purpose become manifest. Interfere with our never-ending conversation.
True. Okay, Mookie. Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much, and we'll keep track, keep in touch, and I could have you back on when Synthetic publishes.
Oh, absolutely.